There's a moment most people never talk about. That split second, right before you do the thing you told yourself you wouldn't do again. You're fully awake. Completely aware. And you watch yourself do it anyway. That's not weakness. That's not a character flaw. That's something far more specific and far more fixable than most people realize. And what makes it worse? The shame that follows. That quiet voice that says, "Why can't I just stop?" That loop of guilt, disappointment, and another failed attempt. And here's the part that nobody talks about, that shame? It's not just painful. It's actually feeding the cycle. We'll come back to that. But I need you to understand something first. Something that genuinely changes how you see yourself and your habits. You didn't choose these patterns. Not fully. Your brain did. And it did it because it was trying to protect you. Your brain is not your enemy. But it is relentlessly, almost obsessively, trying to save energy. Every conscious decision you make carries a real biological cost. Attention, reasoning, self-control, these are not unlimited resources. And your brain, burning through nearly a fifth of your body's total energy at any given moment, is under constant pressure to find shortcuts wherever it can. So it watches. Every repeated action you take, your brain is quietly cataloging it. Measuring the energy cost. Watching for the reward that follows. And when a behavior gets repeated enough, especially when it's wired to any form of relief, comfort, or pleasure, your brain makes a decision you never consciously agreed to. It pulls that behavior out of your thinking mind and hands it over to autopilot. That's not a metaphor. That's a literal neurological transfer. There's a region deep inside your brain called the basal ganglia. It's ancient. Preconscious. And its job is pure execution, no reflection, no second guessing, no asking whether what it's running is actually good for you. Once a behavior lives there, your prefrontal cortex, the part that reasons, plans, and imagines consequences, barely gets a seat at the table. Here's the image that will make this click. Conscious decisions travel through the slow lane of your brain. Deliberate. Thoughtful. Effortful. But habits? They're already running in the fast lane. Before awareness even fully forms, the behavior has begun. This is why just deciding to stop rarely works. You're sending a measured, rational message through a slow channel to interrupt a pattern that's already executing at speed. And here's what that means for you. The problem was never about trying harder. It was about not understanding where the pattern lives, and therefore, trying to stop it at the wrong point in the system. There are 5 very specific places inside this cycle where you can interrupt it. Not through motivation. Not through guilt. Through understanding exactly how your brain learns, stores, and runs automatic behavior, and using that same mechanism in reverse. The first step might actually frustrate you at first. Because it asks you to stop focusing on the habit entirely. Type in the comments, what's the one habit you keep returning to, even when you know better? You might be surprised how many people are fighting the exact same pattern. Most people go to war with the wrong enemy. They fight the craving. They fight the urge. They white-knuckle through the moment, and then wonder why, 3 days later, they're right back where they started. But the habit was never the real problem. The trigger was. Think about it this way. A fire alarm doesn't create the fire. It just responds to it. And if you keep ripping the alarm off the wall without ever finding the actual source of the smoke, the alarm will keep going off. Different wall. Same alarm. Your habits work exactly like this. Every automatic behavior you have is actually a response, a deeply trained answer to something your brain detected in your environment, your body, or your emotional state. Stress. Boredom. Loneliness. Overstimulation. Social discomfort. These aren't just emotions. Inside your nervous system, they're signals. And your brain, already trained by months or years of repetition, fires its practiced response before you've even consciously registered what you're feeling. So the first shift isn't stopping the habit. It's learning to read the signal underneath it. For the next week, don't try to quit anything. Just observe. Notice the exact moment right before the pattern begins. What were you feeling? What just happened? What thought crossed your mind? What did your body feel like? You'll find a pattern faster than you expect. And once you see the trigger clearly, something subtle changes. That moment of recognition? That's your prefrontal cortex waking back up. That's awareness stepping in front of automaticity. That tiny gap between trigger and behavior? That's where change actually lives. The second thing that matters, and most people massively underestimate this, is your environment. Willpower is not a personality trait. It's a resource. And like every resource, it depletes. Research consistently shows that people who seem most disciplined aren't people with exceptional internal strength. They're people who built environments where the battle rarely has to happen in the first place. Your brain takes the path of least resistance. Every single time. Not because it's lazy, because it's efficient. So if the thing you're trying to stop is easier to access than the thing you're trying to build, you've already lost before the craving even peaks. Make the old behavior inconvenient. Genuinely inconvenient. Not as punishment, as engineering. You're not fighting yourself. You're redesigning the terrain. Create physical distance from what pulls you backward. Even 10 seconds of added friction between you and a habit can completely interrupt the automatic sequence. That brief delay is enough for your conscious mind to rejoin the conversation. Now here's where most habit change advice quietly fails people. They remove the habit. And they leave a gap. But your brain doesn't do gaps well. Those patterns existed because they were providing something. Some form of relief. Some form of escape. Some form of stimulation. And when that goes away without a replacement, the brain doesn't heal. It searches. And it searches until it finds the original answer. This is why relapse so rarely feels like a decision. It feels like gravity. The solution isn't elimination. It's substitution. Find what the habit was actually giving you, and find a different route to that same destination. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be real enough that your brain accepts it as a valid trade. Because here's what nobody tells you about rewiring your brain. The old pathway doesn't get destroyed. It gets outpaced. Every time you take the new route, the old one gets quieter. Not gone. Just less dominant. Less automatic. Less loud. And that changes everything. What environment change do you think would make the biggest difference in your life right now? Drop it in the comments. Sometimes naming it out loud is the first real step. Here's the thing nobody prepares you for. You can do everything right. Change your environment. Identify your triggers. Build better replacement behaviors. And then, one genuinely difficult day, everything falls back to where you started. And the reason still isn't weakness. It's identity. Your brain doesn't just store behaviors. It stores the story you believe about who you are. Every thought you repeatedly tell yourself about yourself isn't just passing emotion. It's carving a neurological groove. And your brain, relentlessly obsessed with efficiency, treats a familiar self-perception the exact same way it treats a familiar habit. It defaults to it automatically. So when someone constantly thinks I always give up, I have no real willpower. I'm just built this way, that's not frustration talking. That's programming. And without realizing it, they reinforce the neural identity that makes failure feel inevitable. This is why the fourth step has nothing to do with behavior at all. It's about who you're choosing to become, and repeating that internal choice quietly and consistently enough that your brain begins treating it as baseline. Not empty affirmations. Something far more neurologically precise. When you catch yourself thinking I'm trying not to scroll, shift it. I'm someone who guards where their attention goes. When the thought is I keep failing at this, replace it with I'm learning how my own brain actually works. Small language shift. Massive neurological consequence. People who build real long-term discipline didn't depend on motivation. They repeated the right behaviors until their brain stopped treating those behaviors as effort. Until those actions simply became automatic. That same neuroplasticity is available to you right now. The final step is one most people skip entirely because it sounds almost too simple. Reward yourself immediately. Not after the transformation. Not when the results finally arrive. Right now. After the small win. Here's the truth your brain operates by: immediate rewards always outrank distant ones. This is exactly why bad habits hold so much power. The scroll feels good now. The avoidance feels relieving now. The junk food delivers real comfort now. Good habits rarely work that way. The payoff is real, but it comes later. And a distant reward barely competes against an instant one. So close that gap deliberately. Acknowledge the small win. Track the streak visually. Let yourself feel genuine satisfaction in the interruption itself, not just in the eventual outcome. Because your brain learns through reward and repetition. Not through final results alone. Every single time you interrupt the old pattern, even just once, something real shifts inside your nervous system. The old pathway gets quieter. The new one grows stronger. And eventually, without force, without fighting yourself, the new behavior becomes the one that arrives automatically. That's not willpower. That's your brain doing what it was always designed to do. Learning. Adapting. Rewiring. And this time, finally, working for you. If this video helped, share it with someone who needs it. Sometimes one real idea landing at the right moment changes everything.